Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger, the Dragon's Den, blogger inside the OAA, one of the hosts of Between Taramina and Earlier Television. I'd like to welcome our friends watching on Oxford Community Television and also those watching on YouTube. We've got a very interesting show. Of course, I got a lot of comments last week ranging from the Marshall issue to the Lake Orion girls basketball issue. When I look at that issue, I still have a lot of confidence that I still believe Kevin Kopech's going to be the permanent coach for that team. But I also got to keep an eye on Bob Bridges in that situation. But we got a lot to talk about here today. We got so we're keeping an eye on the girls basketball situation at Lake Orion, referring that one. But I believe I know where they're going to go. But I got a lot to talk about here today. Of course, some recent news about about what's going on with the gross eel situation involving those two lacrosse players being charged for murdering a pig. And also we got Tim Connolly's in the news, but I think in the wrong ways over here surrounding Southfield regarding football cuts. And also we got the MHSAA MSCBA showcase that was held for the boys' side of things last Thursday at Milford. The girls are this week, and why I think why every OAA team should be represented and not a certain few. So let's go to my main story here. Of course, the first one here is let's go to Southfield. Of course, Southfield's been in the news recently, especially what was going on with the girls' basketball situation surrounding Michelle Marshall being named over Jamie Gentz. But, this is another matter, football. Of course, as we all know, Southfield and Southfield Lathrop merged this year. They're going to merge this fall. And you basically look at how many football players Coach Tim Connolly is going to have this year. So he had a total of 122 players tried out for varsity, and he only kept 70. I mean, I'm going like, what in the blue blaze is going on here? Why are you cutting players here? Why? I mean, you look at the players that I understand most of the kids that Tim Connolly's going to have back are mostly Southfield kids, and that there's 20 of 22 players are seniors and they're going to D1 schools. I mean, they're being looked at heavily. But, when you're merging schools, it's a situation that it's got to look at from a different perspective. And I just think that this is repulsive what they're doing, not being mean. It's because here's a team, that's just merged two schools together. You've had both teams made the playoffs a year ago, and you're doing cuts? Why? You look at teams around the area here where you have Clarkston and Orion. They have about 85, 90 kids on their team, and Southfield wants to go down to 70? Why? I mean, this has got a lot of trouble written all over it. I really believe this does. And I know how good Southfield's going to be this year. They're going to be a very good football team. I think they're going to threaten to beat Detroit Cass Tech this year in the regional. I believe that. But you look at but why would you cut players? It's not right. It was in an article read by Tom Murkowski, state champs. And I think when you look at the situation with this one here, why are you cutting players when in a sport where everybody plays and participates? I played football myself, and, I didn't play much, but I was thankful to be part of the team. What's going on with Southfield? I mean, you look at the situation. I understand that you had two schools merge, and you have 122 players. I understand that, but when you have a situation where you have 122 players, you know what I mean? I understand the need to cut, but if you want to be one of those schools that you're merging into one big school, you're going to basically say, well, we don't have a lot of room for it. You know what I mean? This is a program that's going to have about 200 kids in the program when you look at freshman, junior varsity, and varsity. But there's going to be some certain kids, you know what I mean, like certain sophomores, put them on the JV team. You know what I mean? If you have certain freshmen who are good but they're not ready for the varsity level, put them on the freshman team. I mean, it makes a lot more sense. You're going to be more better off in the long run than you are in the short run instead of cutting these kids. Instead of cutting these kids entirely. What are they going to do now? What are they going to do? Because football was an outlet to these kids. It was. And now, by the looks of it, you know, there are other sports at Southfield that are in need of some athletes. There are, especially in the fall, when you look at sports like cross country, of course, and then also you got tennis. And then, of course, you got soccer. Of course, soccer. Southfield, they're not great in soccer. They're not that strong. But when you bring in a new team like this, like Southfield, you bring in a new team like this, you know, why not? You get some of those players. I mean, they're going to be athletes too, and you know, you play soccer. You know what I mean? Or maybe even go run. You know, it'll help you in the long run if you're a Southfield athlete who got cut from football, and which I think cutting is absolutely repulsive, especially in football. And you know, it'll get you a scholarship elsewhere. It'll get you you'll get an opportunity to play in that situation. You know, when I look at the situation surrounding when I look at the situation here, now I know Southfield did merge. Most of the kids that transferred out to other schools, most of them kind of went to Groves and kind of went to West Bloomfield, you know, for their, to play. But, you know, I understand most of the kids Connolly has back are from Southfield, who played under him last year. And there were some players that decided from Lathrop who decided to stay on at Southfield. So, I mean, like, and end of the day, you got to think what's going on here. And I know their first game is going to be a very tough game. They got to play Detroit Martin Luther King on the 27th. You still got to play, and then when they get in the league play, this is a team I think it could really, they've got a lot to prove as a first-year team. Cutting players is not a way to go. Now, do I think this is going to be in the long haul? No, absolutely not. But when you look at the situation that's done, you know, when you cut players to get to around 70 kids, 70 kids, are you kidding me? If you want to go 80, 80's fine with me. 80, 85's fine. 70 is a little too less when you look at how many players you can have, because you can't go around with not having a lot of depth. Having depth in football is a great thing to have. You know, and I know Tom Murkowski in his blog article said having too much depth's a good thing. It is. I mean, when you look at teams like Clarkston, Lake Orion, those two teams, they have a lot of depth. You know, then you look at Troy Athens this year. They have a lot of depth because they got a lot of kids in their school district. You know, it kind of surprises me that schools like Troy and Rochester, they got a lot of kids in their school district, and yet they're in the blue this year for football. How is that made? I mean, when you look at the situation here, I mean, when you look, I still believe, just personally, I think the divisions are messed up a little bit, but that's just my thoughts. Because, you know, when you look at Southfield, Southfield's natural rivals are in the white division. When you look at Harrison, Oak Park, when you look at Harrison and Oak Park in there, and then you look at Adams's rivals are basically in the red with Clarkston, Orion, and Oxford. You know, that's shocking to me that how that was made. You know, how Southfield got to go up to the red division, and Orion and Adams stayed in the white. That to me was very questionable. And then we look at the blue division. It's a 19 division where you're guaranteed you can't, whereas you're guaranteed basically, you got Bloomfield Hills, a team that has a big enrollment, and they're in the blue division after suffering 2 miserable years in the red division. And then you have Troy and Rochester. Troy last year, when I look at the stats, they were the worst defense in the OAA last year. Allowed 40.1 points a game. Pontiac allowed 40 points a year ago. That's absolutely frightening. Now, when you look at these two teams, how can you say that the Red this year has 7 capable playoff teams? All 7 are capable playoff teams. When you look at Orion, Clarkston, Southfield, West Bloomfield, Oxford, Stony Creek, and Troy Athens. Troy Athens last year improved their defense. But when you're in a division, when you bring in a team like Southfield, who's got a lot of athletes on this team, they're going to be senior heavy, very experienced, but this team's got a lot to prove when you look at the Warriors, because last season, a lot of people said this was Southfield's best chance. However, they were upset at Hurley Field. It was both Southfield and Southfield Lathrop. Both those teams were upset at Hurley Field. Well, Lathrop and Berkeley, the Lathrop-Berkeley game kind of was not surprising, but the Southfield game was much of a shocker than it was a victory for Berkeley, because I did not see that coming last year with what happened to Tim Connolly's team. When you look at Southfield, they got a lot of experience, but they're still playing some new competition. I don't think a lot of teams who have to go to Southfield this year are going to like having to play their games at 5:30. I don't think that's right. People ask, why is Southfield playing their games at 5:30? Where's Friday Night Lights to this? Where is Friday Night Lights to this? And instead, you're playing a game at 5:30. You're forcing a northern team like a Clarkston or a Lake Orion to have to come down during rush hour, and that's not right. That is not right at all. When you look at the situation surrounding having to see Southfield having to see a team like Clarkson or Lake Orion having to go down to Southfield and play a game in rush hour. Now, I understand there are a lot of gangs down there. I understand that. And it's for police reasons. But still, what is the point of not having Friday Night Lights when you're not playing at 7 o'clock? Would you want to play Saturday at 1 o'clock? I don't think a lot of people like to play a game Saturday at 1 o'clock, especially if you're north of M59. But like I said, this is something that it's really much been a bothersome segment with Southfield, of course, them cutting players, getting of course, playing their games at 5:30. It's kind of starting to become a hassle with some of these teams. When you look at boys basketball games, Southfield plays their varsity games at 5:30. Further, like to play them at 4:30. This is not the Detroit Public School League, for goodness sakes. This is an OA team playing their games at 5:30 at night. I understand it's for safety reasons. But still, there's people at arms, I'll bet, saying, wait a minute here, why aren't we playing at 7 at night? Why aren't we playing at 7 at night? It's not right. Especially if you're a northern team having to come down to play Southfield. That's not right. Oak Park, they play their games at 6 o'clock. I understand that. 6 o'clock, I think, is very manageable. But playing a game at 5:30, 4:30, no. Especially when you have a school, when you have lights, for goodness sakes. I don't know what to say, because it baffles me. It baffles me what Southfield is doing. It really does. But when you look at Southfield, Southfield's going to have a good team. You look at team next year, though, they'll still be okay. But this has got to be the year for Tim Conley and his team to turn the Magic around, to make a playoff run. You're going to likely be in Division I. You're going to likely be in a district or a region with Detroit Cass Tech. It wouldn't surprise me if they're in a district, or if they have to go to Detroit and play them. Now, a lot of people have a lot of hype surrounding the Technicians. They're good. Don't get me wrong. But if there's one team in that league in Division I, I think it could definitely beat Detroit Cass Tech. It's Southfield. Because they have a quarterback in Samuel Johnson, strong running game, and then you have a defense that's pretty good. You know, that's one of the it was one of the best defenses in the OAA last year. When you look at the Southfield Blue Jays part of the team. Lathrop, they got some athletes. But last season, Lathrop was one of the, they were middle of the pack in the blue last year, based on defensive efficiency in the league. But when you look at a lot of these kids that are going to be playing this year are basically from Southfield. Basically played for Tim Conley. So basically, and also, when you look at it here, all Tim Conley's staff's in place down there. So it's basically you're playing Southfield. You're playing, but there are some sprinkles of Lathrop in there. Most of Lathrop's athletes transferred out of schools. You look at, I think Bryce Beasley, I think he's an underrated player. I really do. And now he's going to be playing at West Bloomfield. He's got a good team. He's got a good team back. When you look at Jermaine Wynn and Davian Johnson down there, I think that Ronald Bellamy's team's going to be all right. He's got to address the line. I think West Bloomfield's good to go. But when you look at a team like Groves, whose schedule is absolutely nightmaric, when you have to play with that white schedule early, and you got to open up, you got to play West Bloomfield first, and then you close out the year at Saline. That's going to be difficult. Saline's not a bad team. It wouldn't surprise me if Groves wins 3 games. It really wouldn't. But when you look at it here, my final thoughts on Southfield, of course, this is a situation where the Warriors, when you look at it here, you don't cut players. You just don't cut players. If, let's say, for example, if a player had a disability and they wanted to play football and you cut him, it's terrible. It's not right. It's not right. But it's not right. It isn't right. But end of the day, it is what they're doing down there. What Tim Conley's team's doing. I don't like how they're cutting players. And I understand merging the schools together, but when you have 122 kids on a team, there are other sports open for them to play. But football is one of the main sports, and they like to be part of the team. So that's my thoughts on the situation at Southfield. With the football, and also a little bit of football wrinkles in there. So, okay, now when we come back, we're going to talk about basketball here on OAA Now.
We own a Habitat home.
I love working on my Habitat home.
Soy dueño de una casa de Habitat.
My neighbor is a Habitat homeowner.
Being a Habitat homeowner has changed our lives.
My mortgage payment for Habitat is less than what I paid for rent.
Habitat for Humanity of Oakland County currently has homes available with mortgage payments lower than most rent payments. If you or someone you know needs decent and affordable housing, call 248-338-1843 or visit our website at habitatoakland.org.
Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Termina here. Of course, we now have, of course, an interesting article here that was released. According to happened on Thursday. The annual MHSBCA showcase was held at Milford High School. And, when you look at it here, this is an individual camp where you show your talents out. You show your, you basically and you have college scouts there. And I think when you look at the situation there, and there were about 8 OA players that came to this camp. They were Jason Dees of Troy, Hunter Slasher of Rochester, Jordan Graham of Farmington, CJ Robinson of Clarkson, Tristan Meissen of Clarkson, Michael Flowers of Southfield, Kiwana Grant of Bloomfield Hills, Drew Shecko of Groves, and Jalen Kelso Pontiac. But we don't know where that situation's going to go with Pontiac, considering the situation where that is going with, of course, Ben Kelso not coaching at Pontiac. And, of course, now that it's more than likely, I think Jalen Kelso is going to go elsewhere. If he plays at Pontiac, I'd be shocked. But at the end of the day, I just think he's going to be playing out somewhere else before the season starts. So when you look at these players, they're going to be very good players. There's no doubt about that. But, I don't like how the MHA gave out their invitation process. I really did not. Because you look at the situation, how that's going to go. And they're going to get a lot of hype, but it also opens up the door for scouters. You know what I mean? If you're basically a high school scout, basically, just like I am, looking at these players, it's going to be a very interesting situation where you got to study players' strengths, their weaknesses. Now, I understand they're getting taught. They're getting some speakers to listen to. Of course, I know Carlton Valentine was one of the speakers at that camp at Milford, and they scrimmaged and they drilled. Where they were at. Of course, a lot of those players benefited from that type of camp because of the experience it gave them. And a lot of people have been working hard during this process. But, when I look at it here, I don't like how the invitation process is given. When you look at everybody around the state, there's about how many teams in the state? Probably think about there's almost like 500 schools, in this state. And everybody should have equal representation on the table. And I've learned that from my days of being in government classes. Everybody should have a role on the table. And I think every team should have a role on the table. And the reason why I say every team should have a role on the table, it's pretty simple. Because there's people out there that are struggling to at least get their names recognized, get college scouts to look at them, and to come by invitation only, that's pathetic. Because to come by invitation only, give everybody a chance. Give them a chance. Don't give it out by invitation only. For those who deserve to go and get their invitation, to get invited to go, that's fine. But to not just give it out to everybody, give everybody a chance. For goodness sakes, there's people in Detroit there's people down in Detroit, that are willing to take an opportunity given to them. And there's people from up in the UP, give them that same opportunity to come up to the camp and show them your skills to basically get looked at, get recruited. Not to give it to a certain few. These certain few, yes, they deserve to go. But everybody else throughout the rest of the state should go to this camp. At least send one of your players to go. And you look at it here from this situation, if you're a player that gets invitational only, I think the process they're doing is pathetic. And those players who deserve to go. But I think it should be given from whether you're in Monroe, Detroit, all the way up, the rest of the state, up to near Iron Mountain. The entire state should have at least representation in these camps. Not a certain few. When you look at it here, of course, the boys had it this week. Last week, the girls are going to have it this week. It's an interesting dynamic. Of course, this has been going on for 8 years. 8 years. And you look at the situation, how that is. Of course, when you look at, there are a lot of great girls basketball players in this state. And I think they're going to do a very magnificent job. But there's going to be a few that are going to get the opportunity, to go to this camp. I don't know how it's limited. I don't know how. If it was unlimited, I don't have a problem with it. I think everybody should have equal representation on the table, like I mentioned earlier, with the boys situation. I mean, if I'm them, that's what I'm looking at. This is a group that has to look at equal representation. And I think there's a huge problem with that, is not everybody is getting a seat at the table. And that's why, you look at these players, they get much more recognized. When you look at people getting a lot more recognized, for their ability and their talent, I mean, you get to see, there's people, I know there's a lot of people who want to see some of the best players in the state of Michigan. Some of the best talent that other counties have. But I would like to have something done, basically if you're an OAA team, basically I would like to see every school represented. Each of the 23 schools represented in this league. That's fair to me. That is fair. Is if you have equal representation, from in the OAA from Oxford down to Ferndale, makes a lot of sense. I mean, at least send one representative to the showcase, to give them the experience, to give them an opportunity to shine. I mean, to learn the drills, to basically teach from the some of the best coaches in the game. That's what I'm trying to say here. That's my thoughts here on this on the situation here. Is I wish that these people have to give equal representation. Equal representation. But do I think it's going to happen? No. Because this is I don't know, whoever organizes this camp, whoever organizes must have decided to have it based on invitation only. Invitation only. All I have to do is nod my head. All I have to do. Because you got players and look, there's certain other teams that got left out of this whole situation. When you look at Abbott, Avion didn't have players there, Oxford didn't have players there, Orion didn't have players there, Troy Athens didn't have players there, North Farmington didn't have players there. I mean, Hazel Park didn't have a player there, Ferndale. These players are going to be good players. When you look at the situation, how this is done, whoever's in charge of the interview process has to be questioned. Seriously. They need to be I think they need to do some soul searching. That's just my thoughts on that situation. And the reason why I think that, it's a shame that I believe that, everybody should be well represented. And especially in in a basketball mecca like the OA. I believe each school should be represented. I believe that, and you look at the situation, each of these players, these players deserve to go. I understand that. But I think everybody else should go. Everybody else should get at least a chance to go to this camp and get an opportunity to play. Okay, now my top 10. Of course, my thoughts here, very interesting. My way too early basketball rankings to start off. Let's go with boys basketball first. Of course, my top team is Clarkson. Because when you look at who they've got, the addition of Trisha Myson, the 6'5 transfer from Oxford, very interesting. You got the way that C.J. Robinson, Foster Loyal, Dylan Addison are all back. You got Chase Wasilic back. Matt Nicholson's going to be a guy to keep an eye on. He's going to probably be your starting center for Clarkston. I think Clarkson's got a serious run in him this year. I really do. My number 2 team is North Farmington because of Amari Hardy. A lot of people have asked. But they've got 12 other guys that are going to be very young. And I think they're going to struggle a little bit besides Hardy because everybody's going to focus on shutting them down and forcing anybody else to beat them besides Hardy. Southfield is my 3rd best team because of Flowers and Tolbert, but they got to address the forward situation. West Bloomfield, my 4, is ranked 4. I like McAdoo. I like Wynn. They're deep and talented as well. Jeremy Dunn's got a good enough team, I think, to compete in this league. Bloomfield Hills is my 5th best team. Mike Mariansky's done. Got Graham, Keanu Graham, Josh Jones, Ray Dillenworth. They're gonna be a team to keep an eye on. Troy's number 6 because of Jason Dietz and Isaiah Smith. But they also got Christian Lafayette back. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on for sure this year. Hazel Park's my 7th best team because of Carl Bowe, Cameron Boatman, Cesar Brooks, Devin Pettis, and Dan Hearns. But they got to address the depth situation. That's $1 billion question there. If Hazel Park can get depth, they're going to be fine. Groves is my number 8 team, especially when you have 2 guys like Marcus Pittman and Drew Shekel. And then your bench is very good, very athletic, very deep. I like what Mark West has done with this team, but they got to address some things a little bit. They'll fix some things up. Avenue, my number 9 team, they're going to be experienced. They have Dominic Kabuja back and Vihorn Munson, Ty Munson, and Marton Cole. This is a team that I think to keep an eye on going forward is Avondale. I really like this Yellow Jacket team. They're going to be solid. My 10th best team is Rochester. Of course, as mentioned, you got the Gulledge brothers, Hunter Schlachner, Ivan Barraza Duran. They got 8 returning lettermen on that team. That'd be interesting to keep an eye on. Other teams to keep an eye on are definitely going to be Lake Orion. I think Orion's a team to be kept an eye on. Especially, they got a December schedule. It's absolutely murderous. But I do like Steven Zimieski and Jamie Lewis. Oxford is another team to keep an eye on. You got Jordan Jaden, John Lavos, and Ray Levine all back. That's another team to keep an eye on. Going forward, I think those 2 teams are going to be right up there. And also, odd to believe Farmington. You know what I mean? When you look at Farmington, this is a team that's favored in the gold division, but they do have some depth back. I just think that Farmington's another one to keep an eye on going forward, heading into the season. Of course, Stony Creek's another team to keep an eye on, and also Rochester Adams. Adams, of course, new coach Brad Crichton. That's another team to keep an eye on going forward. Girls basketball, of course, when you look at the situation there, I think Southfield is the top team because of what Michelle Marshall's going to bring. But as I mentioned last week, they got some questions with the Southfield girls, particularly Alexis Johnson, Delana Hallman, Taylor Washington, Lazara Franklin. I mean, they got some depth concerns too. And then, of course, you got the almighty Deja Church. You know what I mean? The almighty Deja Church, who I think could be a Miss Basketball candidate this year. But like I said with Southfield, I don't know if they can knock out. I don't know if this is a different Southfield team than in years past. And I don't know if Michelle Marshall's going to get that team ready for later in the stretches when they get in the district play. They're not going to have a lot of playoff experience on that floor besides Church. And if I had to put them against Detroit Renaissance right now, against Detroit Martin Luther King right now, I would take the Crusaders right now over the Warriors right now. Stony Creek's my number 2 team right now. I love what Kellen James has done with this team. Of course, you got Emily Alcar, Emily Sillock, Gina Kearney, and Allie Voss. And they have a brutal, and their non-conference schedule is absolutely vicious, which I like that, because they got to play Waterford Kettering and Birmingham Marion in that schedule. That's not going to be easy games. And then, of course, you have when they get in the league play, then you have a tough crossover game with Orion. I think it's going to be very interesting what Stony Creek's going to have. North Farmington's my third best team. When you have Kelsey Luss back, Samantha Cherny and Kiera Crockett all back, Patty Chajokian's, I think, is the key player because she's going to be playing a very important role for the Raiders. And then besides that, they got some bench concerns. Who's going to replace Alexa Cherny from a year ago? That's a major question for Jeff Simpson and the Raiders this year. Clarkson's my fourth best team, and it was a very tight situation with them. I don't trust their guard play a lot. I do like but they do have Christian Page and Maddie Beck back, but their bigs are very good when you look at Kayla Lukenbach and Molly Nicholson. I think that they've got to address the whoever is their point guard situation. They address that. I think Clarkson's going to be a very dangerous team heading forward. And then of course you got the fifth best team, which is Orion. When you look at the Dragons, you have Maddie Novak, who I think is a very dangerous player. You have Tessa Noose, very good defensive player, Sophie Wyborski, and Delaney Bryce. Now it's whoever the coach is going to be. When I look at my who I think it should be, I got a pretty good idea who it should be. A lot of people are thinking of who it should be. But if I think it is who it's going to be, this team's going to be a very scary team when you look at it. I think when you look at the situation that the Dragons are in, it all depends who the coach is. And if they can get the players to play for them. Because usually players play harder for coaches they like. And that should be the theme. That's what I think the Dragons are going to be this year. We'll see what happens with this team. But I think Orion, they got a chance to be a very dangerous team this year. They're a young team, but they're a very good young team. Bloomby Hills is 6 because of who they got back. Of course, you look at Amanda Sate back, returning from a concussion. Victory Franklin, Kathleen Prinna, Becca Hancock, Maya Jones, and Marion Hessian back. That's good. That's a good team right there. They're going to go 8 deep. I expect Bloomfield Hills to be much better sound. Oddly enough, this was a better road team last year than at home. They got to address their homes. They got to address home sweet home. Of course, playing at that new gym kind of really was difficult on them a year ago. But they've got to address playing at that new gym over there. Now, I don't know if they'll think about, and it's not likely they're going to do this, but if they wanted to play their games at Bloomfield Hills Losser, that could be a possible option there. But end of the day, I just think that they got to address the home schedule. They got to address their home floor, and I think Jeff Rubin's team's going to do that. This is his best team he's going to have in a long while because this is a very senior-heavy team that Bloomfield Hills is going to have this year. Royal Oak is my 7th best team here. Of course, this is a team, very good team. Of course, you have June Donlin, Mikhail Williams, Claire Kozinski, and Samantha Potter. The only question I have for Brian Zapata's team is their depth and also their point guard. They have to address that. If they address that, then Royal Oak's a dangerous team heading forward. Oxford's my number 8 team. When you look at the Wildcats, they got a lot back for first-year coach Rachel Breyer. Of course, you have Monet Evans, Madeline Morris, Jordan Zinger, Grace Cleveland, all back. Very solid lineup. But the question's going to be is how are you going to get that scoring production for after losing a girl like Abigail Bukevich, of course, and also Kate Wright's energy is not there anymore. Of course, they both graduated. So how is Rachel Breyer going to address that? Of course, I expect Morris and Evans to do very, very well from an offensive standpoint, as well as Grace Cleveland. I think last year Oxford had a lot of girls play out of position. I think if Breyer addresses the position battles, get those players back to their regular positions, Oxford could be a very scary team going forward. Seems my number 9 team. I think that when you look at it here, I am finally glad that they toughened up their non-conference schedule. They got to play Stony Creek and they got to play Clarkson. I'm very happy about that one. But, when you have a player like Mackenzie Harbour, who I don't know how she's all state the last few years when she hasn't played the type of schedule that I would say a Stony Creek or Lake Orion or Clarkston or an Adams has, or an Oxford has, but, how is she all state? How? But you have Dana Holman, Caroline Owens, and Wendy Wilkerson all back for January Herleski. I'm glad they toughened up their non-conference schedule. And then the last but not least, my number 10 team is the Falcons of Groves. A lot of talent back for Amos Thompson. You got Shea Carter, Lexi Carter, June Jung, Morgan Morrison are all back. They're favored in the gold this year. Berkeley's a team I think to keep an eye on this year, especially because I think they're a dark horse candidate. West Bloomfield's an interesting one to keep an eye on as well, because West Bloomfield, they like to go and shock some people somewhere. Adams is another team. Of course, got Maggie Rogers, Ryan Owusu, and Hannah Samard back for Shea Rogers, for Shea Lewis, and and also Rochester is another team. Rochester and Troy Athens are two other teams to keep an eye on this upcoming girls basketball season. So that's my top 10 for the for both boys and girls basketball right now. So okay, now when we come back, we'll talk about what's going on. Of course, we got some news here on OAA Now.
I'm Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard and former Red Wing great Joey Koser reminding you to follow the rules regarding boater safety. Always operate at safe speeds, avoid alcohol, and wear a life jacket. Don't let a great day on the water be ruined by bad decisions.
Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Termina here. Of course, some of our big stories here, of course, is, of course, what's going on recently in the news. Of course, we just found out about the guinea pig situation that happened at Grosse Ile. Of course, Grosse Ile is not in Oakland County. It's in Macomb County. And two guys are being charged with killing a guinea pig. And that, to me, was just a shame. You know, first of all, why would you do a prank like that? Why? It's absolutely stupid why they would do that. It's a, if they had to do this over again, they probably should not have done it, because it was absolutely wrong. You know, I mentioned this a couple months ago when I talked about this topic. And I said that about the situation was, I'm a pro-life person. I always believe in animals having a pro-life, and I believe that anybody should have pro-life. And, and I think that, as I said earlier, animals deserve to have a life. They deserve to have whatever, you know what I mean? And even farm animals, they deserve to have life. And, what happened here, now, I'm not proving innocence for guilty here, but like I said before, this is a situation in which this was sick. This was sad, and this was wrong, because what these two boys did. I'm surprised that there should have been more charged. Why is there just these two? Unfortunate, situation, which I thought, more would be charged in this crime, because they were witnesses to it. They saw it happen. Now they got the two who did it, and who killed the pig, and who hit the pig with a baseball bat. That's not right. You know what I mean? That's terrible. That's horrible what they did and what they're charged with in Macomb County. And if found guilty, they could face up to 4 years in prison. If I'm the prosecution here, I give them the max. But if they take a plea deal and get stuck with community service hours, I'd be very disappointed, because when you when you take somebody's life, when you take an animal's life, I think animals and people should be held, in the same content, because, when you look at it here, we're in a society now that, you got to have the people who care for you the most. You know what I mean? The people who care for you the most, that they love. I mean, that you love, especially when you have an animal. When you have, I love my cat. I love my cats. You know what I mean? To death. I'll do anything for them. I know there's people out there that have dogs and they have cats. You know what I mean? That they have other animals that they love and care about. They'll do anything for them. And I think that what these two boys did was absolutely wrong, absolutely criminal, and it should not be. It shouldn't be tolerated. And at the end of the day, if they're guilty, they're only going to face 4 years in prison. And I don't think it's right that they would do this, but if they take a plea deal, I'd just throwing my head and just going my hands going like this. I would not believe it. I'd be very disappointed if the judge does not throw the book on these two. They played lacrosse, Grosse Ile. Of course, the reason why this was important because last year they had a game forfeit against West Bloomfield, and the Grosse Ile lacrosse team had to forfeit that game, and West Bloomfield ended up giving them victory via forfeit. So, my thoughts on that. I hope the judge in that case goes hard on these two young men, and I think they need to learn a lesson. And if they get off easy, I'd be very upset. So let's go to other news, of course, around the state. Of course, recently, of course, since I'll be going up north coming up this weekend, an interesting story came up, and it kind of caught my attention. It's from the Huron Daily Tribune. Of course, a school district called Ubley, Michigan. Of course, Ubley's right in the Thumb area. I'll be going up north into Caseville. But Ubley is going to open up their athletics to sixth graders. Their middle school athletics to sixth graders. I think it makes sense. I like it. When you look at this situation here, why not get more kids involved in playing? And playing sports. You know what I mean? It makes a lot of sense because you look at it here from middle school perspectives, especially in the OAA, and it also in Oakland County entirely. Whereas you have 7th and 8th grade teams, and then you have where you have 7th and 8th grade teams. I know you have that in track, and then of course you bring in 6th graders. 1, it increases your depth. 2, it gives you options. You know what I mean? It gives coaches options to basically, it makes a lot of sense. And it also helps schools that are struggling with enrollment. And in Ubley's case, they were struggling with enrollment. Now, a lot of those schools up north, they're struggling with enrollment because, there's not a lot of kids up there. But this makes a lot of sense. Do I think this should be an idea that Oakland County schools should use? Absolutely. Here's why. Because you look at this situation here, when you're a school district in decline enrollment, why not? Why not expand your middle school teams? Bring 6th graders in there to play, to compete, to build your team. I've been wanting that for years, in my opinion. With track, I think it'd be a great idea because you look at in high school track, you have 4 years. And then you look at middle school, you only have at least 2 years. It wouldn't be bad to add a 3rd year. Really wouldn't. Give the kid an opportunity, to develop their skills. Be a leader not only on the football field, but also the basketball court. And also the track and field ring. Wrestling, volleyball. It makes a lot of sense. It does. It could be a little more restraint on the parents, but you know what? I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it could be an economic thing. If you're a school that has a pay-to-play program, why not go with this idea of having 6th graders play in the middle school level? Makes a lot of sense from an economic standpoint. Academics also wins out on this because, one, it keeps kids out of trouble. Keeps kids from, it keeps kids out of trouble for sure. Especially sixth graders. When you're learning to develop in your own, you're coming off of elementary school, going into middle school, it makes a lot of sense to go this route. And I think what Ubley did was absolutely genius. And I think a lot of other schools should go that route. A lot of other schools should go that route and develop kids from the middle school, especially in the 6th grade ranks, to go up to the 8th grade ranks. It makes a lot of sense. Now, there's going to be those that really are going to really hate me about this because, there's a lot of people are sensitive about that sports should be 7th to 8th grade. 7th and 8th grade only. I mean, but when you're struggling enrollment-wise, this makes the perfect sense. I'm saying this from an economic standpoint, and I'm saying this from an athletic standpoint. You have these kids playing in middle school sports for 3 years. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, it keeps their minds active. It makes them love the sport they play that much more important. And you see it. I mean, you could see it. I think this would be a heck of an idea. At the MHA, I wish the MHA takes this route because allow 6th graders to play makes a lot of sense. Because if they don't, they could take the issue up another year. Who knows? But I love the decision that Ubley made to do that. I would expect probably the rest of the teams up in the Thumb area to do it. Like a Bad Axe, Caseville. Elkton Bayport, around up there in that area. Because it helps. It makes a lot of sense. It keeps people active. It keeps them. Even there's people that love to coach. And I'm one of those guys that love to coach. And you look at the situation here, when you don't have a lot of kids playing, you're forced to cut the sport. Here in this situation, you don't have to cut sports. Because when you have when you have some 6th graders on the team, it benefits. It benefits those, to give them an opportunity to play. Not only in the middle school ranks, but also in the high school ranks. Now, I don't like the fact that colleges are offering 8th grader scholarships already when they haven't played a high school snap. Wait until high school for that if you're a college. Not give them a scholarship in the 8th grade. But, I think it's time to look into that if I'm athletic directors, school presidents, or heck, maybe even Jack Roberts to look into that. I think it's a perfect idea. I really do. The idea of 6th graders to play middle school sports, it makes a lot of sense. Now, people are going to say, well, I don't know if I could trust my kid playing a sport like football. There's some certain sports where you can at least put, not put 6th graders in there. But maybe a sport like track and field, I could see it happening. I mean, it's pretty much where this is going, especially with how the state's going right now, struggling a little bit from an academic from a population standpoint. Now, there's some schools that are increasing. There's some that are decreasing. But, like I said, whoever's in power should make this recommendation. And I think it's a great idea to go with the situation in power and bring 6th graders involved. And put them in, I would say maybe a sport like track and field, maybe a sport like volleyball or wrestling, but football, not yet. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there. My final thoughts on this, of course, I think it's a great idea for what Ubly's doing. I think it's a great idea there. When I look at my final thoughts here for the day, for the weekend, of course, we're heading toward the beginning of football season. I have to believe football is less than a month away. And I've already started to write my football prediction show, my football preview show. Of course, when I look at the insiders of everybody here, I'm going to find out when media day is, of course, and I'll be there. So, we'll have a great show for the football preview show coming up. So that's my final thoughts on that. Of course, we'll keep an eye on the Orion girls basketball situation, what is going on there. I would expect the coach to be named in the next few weeks, but we'll see what happens there. So we'll see what happens there, as we mentioned here. Okay, now I'm going to sign out, everybody here. Of course, it's going to be a hot one, folks. Basically, stay cool in the weather. It's going to be, I know, a couple of days it's going to be really hot, very humid. So stay cool in an air conditioning place or anywhere. You know what I mean? Stay cool. Okay? Good night. God bless. Stay cool, everybody.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.